Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. We're at KubeCon and you're not. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. Extra points for anyone who recognized a little Chevy Chase reference in that opening. Of course, Mitchell did and Mike did, but we're not kids. Anyway, we are here in KubeCon in Salt Lake City, where it's a balmy 35 degrees. And I broke out every stitch of winter clothing that I have to be here. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be joined by our two core gang members. Here on my left, Mitchell Ashley, and on my right, Mike Vizard. Gentlemen,
Start your engines.
Start your engines. So what's the big stories for KubeCon?
Well, I feel like it's a continuation of the conversation we were having in Paris. It's Kubernetes is everywhere, right? Everywhere you go, there's somebody pushing it further and further out onto the edge. They're using it in more stateful applications. And I remember when it first came out, everybody was like, well, this is just a stateless thing. And it was kind of like, a narrow set of use cases. Now you can't turn around anywhere and not see Kubernetes be involved or embedded somewhere. I think the challenge is that we're finding ways to embed it in a way that we don't have to engage with it so deeply, because it's still kind of scary. Nobody wants to deal with walls of YAML files. But I don't know, Mitch, you were walking around. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, the thing that occurred to me is I think we've emerged to the point where Kubernetes is no longer cloud native. It is for cloud native, but it's also for everything else. So to your point, it's showing up everywhere. And I think we're at the point where it's so much everywhere, it's practically ubiquitous, at least it will be. It's going to be essentially the operating platform for any kind of application at the edge, at the core, in the data center, in our own premises. There's companies like Nutanix and others that have solutions. Portworx that does, storage for Kubernetes. It's really becoming part of the fabric of our stack, not just I want to run containers or I want to do microservices, which is kind of where we started.
I was having a chat with Akamai about that.
Okay.
And what they were pointing out was that people are getting smarter about where to deploy the workloads, and Kubernetes kind of creates that common foundation, but not everything is going to be in the cloud. There's a lot of instances where we need to process data and analyze it at the point where it's being created and consumed, and all that happens in real time. And in generally, they were just saying that in their conversations with customers, people are not wrapped up around a specific kind of platform mentality for, I'm all cloud or I'm not all cloud. They've become a little more flexible in their mindset.
Well, as you guys might expect, I have a different view.
No kidding.
Yeah, I have
Really?
an opinion on this. So first of all, yes, Kubernetes is everywhere, and it's still hard as hell.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy enough. And the fact that so many booths on this floor are dedicated to obfuscating and abstracting that Kubernetes so you don't have to work on it, I think says something. Secondly, it's not that Kubernetes is not cloud native. Kubernetes, this show's still called KubeCon and Cloud Native Con. Kubernetes is cloud native. I think the distinction is, you were trying to say you could have Kubernetes without cloud native. I think it's, you could have cloud native without the cloud.
Okay. So equating Kubernetes and cloud native are the same thing, whether
Yes.
you're running microservices or you've lifted and shifted, whatever.
Well,
part of the
lifted
cloud
and
native.
shifted. Are you running Kubernetes on
Sure.
that lift and
Yeah.
shift? Yes,
Yeah.
it's cloud native. But whether you're running Kubernetes in the edge, Kubernetes on the endpoint, Kubernetes, mini kube or whatever they call it, K4s or whatever it is,
K0, K3s, all
Yeah.
that.
it's still cloud native in Kubernetes, because with Kubernetes, are you running containers? Are you
Well,
running
yeah, by default you
microservices?
are, with
Yeah.
Kubernetes, sure.
So these are and then with that comes all of the rest of the 180 odd different projects they got here.
So here's my argument. You be the referee.
I don't want to
okay?
argue.
No, we're just,
Kidding.
point counterpoint,
Uh-huh.
Jane.
Okay.
Um,
No one's ever called me Jane before.
So here's how I'm thinking of it. I think containers also, but Kubernetes sort of transcends beyond cloud native and becomes part of the OS. We ship it with Linux, we ship, because containers are a packaging
Yes.
element, right? And yeah, it does lots of things, and whether you think about Docker or use something else. At Kubernetes, if it's really part of kind of the operational stack for everything, it can ship with the OS.
But
All
is
part
it-
of that. Does that make the OS cloud native?
So let's
See, that's
I would look at it slightly different. So we've always said Kubernetes is a platform for building platforms. And what you're seeing now is all these other platforms that Kubernetes is being
yeah,
inserted
it's
into.
underpinning.
compute stack.
It's like Heroku behind us here is saying that they're all in on Kubernetes now, and that PaaS is going to sit on top of that.
Look, what gave birth to the cloud? What was the stack? And even before the cloud, for the internet era, was the LAMP
Oh yeah,
stack.
sure.
Linux, OS, Apache, web server, MySQL, PHP.
HP.
That was the compute stack for the cloud and for for most of our
Oh,
career.
For the growth of the internet.
Yeah.
Right. It was really the internet.
We have a
stack.
new compute stack that Kubernetes is at the heart of,
I would agree with that.
right? You could or could not have a hypervisor layer. You have your bare metal. Linux is the OS
It's
of
the cloud
choice, so you
stack.
could run it in anywhere. Right, this is the new compute stack.
I agree
It's
with
the
that.
cloud native stack. And whether you run it at a hyperscaler's data center or in bare metal on your own data center in your closet or on, as I said, at the edge or anywhere else, or a Raspberry Pi, it's the compute stack. And, I'm not hung up on whether it's in a cloud or not.
No, I don't either. I think, matter of fact, it's just as valid in your data center, or on your laptop. If you're
Yeah.
doing development there.
I don't think Kubernetes is as hard as it once was.
Oh, it is.
And I think that the tools are a lot better.
Yes,
And
they
and
are.
there's an interesting fact I got from the CNCF folks today. They said that half the people here are first-time attendees, which kind of tells me
Wow.
that
Okay.
there's more people getting into this space in terms of understanding what to do with Kubernetes. And I think they're not all rocket scientists. So I think we've reached a level of accessibility where the community is getting bigger.
So here's the progression story I've heard from more than one vendor. Probably 3 meetings today I've had the same story telling me, which is when Kubernetes started, they said, let me do my own thing. I want control over everything, flexibility, and then we figured out how freaking hard it is, right? And all the complexity that comes with it. Now the pendulum's swinging the other way. I want the cloud provider to operate it for me. I want you to simplify the operational parts of, to your point, of Kubernetes. Yes, and if I want to pull open the hood, I'll break the seal on it, and then I own it, right, if I do that. But that's kind of where, especially when you talk about as many people coming into this ecosystem, they're all not going to be Kubernetes geeks and want to play with the bits and bytes. They just want to operate it, right?
The gal from from Capital One, when she was giving the keynote, she said that their default option is managed services. That's what they go with first, and they're not really interested in getting deep into the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. So I think the next place to go is, when are we going to see Kubernetes underpinning the entire DevOps tool chain, the pipelines that we develop in? I mean, some vendors are kind of already doing this, but it's not, I don't think anyway, that it's commonplace yet.
So that brings me to platformengineering.com.
What about platform engineering?
I'm so glad to announce that we launched that today. But if you read my article around the announcement, and I wrote several versions of that article for each of our main sites, I think you got to look at this whole thing as in terms of a continuum, right? Space-time continuum. And, did I tell you I was evil Dr. Spock for Halloween? You were with me. You were Ben Kenobi.
Ben Kubanobi. I'm Ben Kubanobi.
Yep. He wasn't Freddy from Halloween. He was a Bizarre, an anime character.
From Bleach.
Yes. But that all being said, this continuum is platform engineering, agile, DevOps, DevSecOps, ITSM, SRE, right? AI, what role is AI going to have in upsetting that apple cart and redefining normal remains to be seen.
Mhm.
But these are all pieces of the factory, right? IT workers used to and developers used to think we were very bespoke and we weren't unionized. We discussed this on Techstrong Gang too,
We
right?
did.
Unionizing IT folks. We weren't union workers. We're white collar bespoke artists, craftsmen, guild members even. But what we work in a factory now. And it's the software factory, the software supply chains. We have an assembly line. That's how we develop software. And so what's so hard about getting your head around, right? And Kubernetes is at the core of that assembly line, right?
Yeah, I think it's what
That's
our
the chassis.
I
what our
never liked the
workflows are built
factory
on.
metaphor
You never liked the factory.
because nobody wants to go to work in a factory, right? And software is still an art. I
Speak
gotta
for
go.
yourself.
I gotta.
There's plenty of people out there who want to work in a factory.
I mean,
What's developing
Phoenix
software is an
Project.
art.
that
You
Phoenix
think it's
project,
an art, not a science.
I think it's a little combination of both, but I don't think people really want to think about it as like, oh, we're gonna go churn out software from our little factory all day long.
here's
Park.
the
I hear a Phoenix factory.
yes. So here's where it kind of goes and then stops, and that is as a metaphor for learning about how to apply principles of DevOps. I think the factory works, right? Think Phoenix Project. Think constraints, theory of constraints. So much from Toyota manufacturing theory of constraints is what helped really define DevOps. It's not literally we're sitting in a factory doing one thing. Here you go. Here's my software add widget. Alan, you do your thing. You do your thing, right? But instead of retooling the factory every 3 years, we're rebuilding the factory constantly as we're using it. I mean, it's evolving and changing, a little or a lot, maybe a lot with AI, maybe a lot with Kubernetes. But I don't know if I convinced you, but you're not easy to convince. So I'm not hopeful.
Do I need a hard hat to go to work?
No, you just need
But
a
you
union
should
break.
be in a union.
You need a union break.
There you go. Depends on what state I live in, right?
Don't get me
State of
started.
confusion.
Don't get me started. Had a few conversations here today. Anyway, back to the factory. I think whether we like it or not, and again, I think what you're expressing about the artisan software developer used to be very true, but I think we've got to understand in a world where we're going to have 500 million developers because you could just talk into your AI agent and have it go build something for you. It's not going to be as bespoke as you think anymore. It's rather mundane. Like Henry Ford assembly line. That's what made
Like
America
a word
great.
processor. We all use them to create stuff.
It's a tool.
To that point, we were talking about this yesterday, but I wanted to get your opinion on it. We have the stack as he described it. But if I have AI in front of that to engage in that stack, well, the stack essentially, I don't want to say collapsed, but meld to the point where it's just software that I'm invoking, and I'm not sitting around going, well, what's Kubernetes, what's Istio, and what's Prometheus? They're all just kind of things I'm calling, but I don't really care about them individually. They're just features.
Abstracting. Yeah.
They're all abstracted.
Well, and I think that's the kind of operationalizing of all this is what do you abstract away for the operations team? What do you still want either accessible by developers or AI agents or whatever's creating software? And it's going to be a mix of things, right? Maybe, really specific things developers want access to. AI can have access to all the APIs and do whatever it wants not whatever, but within reason. So I don't know. It's an evolving art, right?
It is. Look, quite frankly, as we sit here today on November 13th, which does anyone know the significance of November 13th?
Is it Vanilla Cake Day?
No. Do you know? On November 13th,
This is Felix, Texas.
No.
Oh.
Felix Unger was asked by his wife to leave his premises.
Yikes.
And he wound up at
Is
the
he a
door
baseball
of his
player?
lifeless
No.
friend, Oscar Madison.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
no, but as we sit here in November 13th, we don't know the full extent of the impact AI is going to have on this stack.
Yeah.
Because just as you're saying, we may not care if it's Prometheus or Kubernetes or what have you. We're not going to care what language your app is written in or what libraries it calls. We're going to be abstracted out of all that, right? We'll sit in our Wally World chairs or Walleye, whatever it was, and just tell it this is what we want.
So you'll love this. Someone told me that they were using Copilot to write some code, and part of their instructions to Copilot was, and I want all the user responses to be in the theme of the Munsters.
Really?
That's what it wrote.
Okay, Lily dear.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Whatever.
No, that's the Addams family.
Oh, Addams family, yes.
This is what happens.
No.
You got to keep them straight. The
Man,
monsters.
it's hard. They're both
Hello, Grandpa.
yes.
Marilyn.
Yep.
Niece Marilyn.
It's good stuff. Or you can have whatever, Dune or,
Hey,
any genre.
this Sunday, Dune Prophecies is out.
It is.
The things you learn on Techstrong Gang.
Nowhere else but here.
So, who was using this Munster software?
I can't tell you that. It was a trade secret.
All right. Because
It wasn't anyone much younger than us, probably.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm not sure that all the end users of that application are going to understand the metaphor.
Extra credit. Who played Eddie?
Patrick, somebody. I don't know.
Butch Patrick.
Butch Patrick. That's what it is.
I have all this useless information
I think-
stored in my brain.
Fred Gwynn was Herman?
Fred Gwynn was Herman, yes.
All right.
Who was Lily? She
Ah,
was a very famous actress.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember.
I cannot remember.
She was Moses' wife
That's
in the
right.
Ten Commandments.
Oh my God.
Yvonne DiCarlo.
John DiCarlo. Okay.
That's as far as I could go. Oh, I know Grandpa too. Anybody wanted for
I
extra
have no idea.
points?
No.
Al Lewis.
I'll
That's
do it.
Grandpa. Quintessential New York guy. Anyway, off of the Munsters and the Addams family, it is an exciting KubeCon. Kubernetes is omnipresent here. I think it is synonymous with this community, which is called Cloud Native. What else do we have to look forward to over the next 2 days, guys?
Well, there's definitely more announcements. Coming. I've been briefed on a few things, and I've got more meetings coming
There
up.
will be, yeah. There'll be stuff on Istio tomorrow that people should check out for certain. And there's some new high-end frameworks coming that are getting tweaked to be more accessible so that we can build really complex applications and not have a million engineers to do it. And it doesn't even involve AI. So that'll be on Friday.
Mhm.
That sounds great. Hey, man, you got to just love being here at our Techstrong booth at KubeCon. I appreciate you both coming in, and we're doing the gang. We've got more interviews to do, though.
Hey, and I'll give a shout out. I'm having a nice time in Salt Lake City,
You
It
know
is. A lot
what?
of people have been very complimentary about it.
It's a little cold. It's a little cold for this Florida boy, but I will tell you, I was here 20 years ago, and it's really become it's a little more diverse than it was 20 years ago, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, and we've had some decent meals here.
And we watched basketball.
And we went, right, Mike? And we're going to hockey tonight. We're going to see, what's that Utah team called? Oh, yeah, the Utah Hockey Club.
The Utes.
No, it's not
No,
even the
that's
Utes.
not the
They got that name.
Okay.
It's just the Utah
It's
Hockey
two
Club.
Utes, but
Yeah. Now, surprisingly, the basketball team is not the Utah basketball team.
no, they're the Jazz.
They're the Jazz. Well, Utah is known as the birthplace of the Jazz.
They will-
Of Jazz.
and the blues,
Of the
and
blues,
rock
yeah.
and roll, and
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, we're getting punchy here. Follow along. We've had a full day of Techstrong at KubeCon coverage live coming up. But for now, we're out of here.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, Alan Schimmel back here on Techstrong TV. Oh, happy to have this next gentleman on. It's the first time he's been on with us. For those of you in the security space, you know, if you had to name one certification that was kind of epitomized security professionals, it would probably be the CISSP, right? I think that goes without saying. And you know, over the years, and I've been in security a very long time, probably as long as John here I'm interviewing is, that's been a constant. And the CISSP is the certification degree of the ISC2 folks. Now, some of you out there may know them as ISC squared. Some of you may have always called them ISC2. But as John corrected me, pointed out while we were at the green room talking, officially, the organization is known as ISC2. John is the CISO there, the CISO. And John, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you on here.
Thanks for being on here. First time, hopefully not the last time.
No, well, you know, we'll have you back on. So, John, well, we're going to get into ISC2 in a second, but let's hear a little bit about John France, CISO.
Yeah,
what
sure.
does being a CISO there mean, or what's kind of your journey to get there?
Yeah, fun fact. I am ISC2's first CISO. I know, amazing.
Okay.
They didn't have one before. So they had a security team, but they didn't have a C-level exec that sort of headed them up. So benefited from that change. My background, I'm a tech person. I'm a geek, not a nerd. I mean, there's a little bit of a distinction, but I've been in technology all my life, but fundamentally, I actually love business as well. And a few people have said, well, you're really weird as a security guy because like you understand business. It's like, yeah, maybe I understand a bit of security too. But my background is I came through network engineering and architectures, and
as many of us did from back then, right?
building server farms to build the internet and some product lines on that, and then telco, my last hop before this one. So mobile telephony, member-led association there representing mobile operators. I ran their internal IT system, so more like a CIO kind of role. Then I went the sort of client side facing on that, and ended up running the fraud and security group for the industry, which was always good fun. High rates of change, and fraud and security, you know, never a dull moment, as we all know. And then joins ISC2. Double-edged sword. I've got the traditional CISO role of protect the organization from threat, whether that's internal, external, or alien. But I also have quite a large advocacy role as well, which is to talk to and advocate on behalf of cyber leadership. Sometimes that's into policy, politics, regulation. Sometimes that's just furthering the aims of the profession. So I do really interesting stuff like this. I get to meet a whole bunch of interesting people and talk tech as well as business. So that's a little bit about me. And I suppose we can probably move on to what ISC2 does.
Sure, yeah. Well, as I said, ISC2 is probably best known as, those are the people behind the CISSP certification.
Yeah,
there's more to it.
Yeah, most people go, who are you? ISC2. CISSP. Oh, it's you, yeah. So, but we celebrate 30 years of the CISSP this year. So, 1994, I think, ish, is when it first came out. So it's been going a good 30 years. But you're quite right to point out ISC2 is not just about certifications. It's safe, secure cyber world is our mission. And we do that via, in part, certification, continuing professional education, and lifelong learning in cybersecurity. And again, a little bit of advocacy, trying to make sure that the rest of the world is going in the right direction. A little bit of technology, a lot of learning, and a lot of talking to our members. We're 675,000 associates, members, and candidates.
Fantastic. We should mention website, isc2.com.
Or, no, .org.
.org, excuse me. Why was I?
Remember that? That's okay. IC2.org. Yeah. So,
.org. All
come
right.
there, find out what we do.
Absolutely. Hey, John, how many people have the CISSP cert these days?
Wow, that's a great question, and I don't have the accurate number, but it's 150,000-ish, something like that, I think, worldwide. That might be all cert holders, but yeah, a pretty big chunk. It's the most popular cert that we do. With the fastest growing actually is the cloud certification. Everyone's going cloud or gone cloud or is about to go cloud. So,
well, what's interesting though is in the cloud cert, there's real competition, right? Cloud Security Alliance, bunch of others. But, ISC2 has carved out their share of that market. Part of the reason is, as we said, beyond doing just certifications, you guys do a lot of industry work, lobby work, if you will, a lot of good work for the cybersecurity industry.
We hope
in general. One of that is the cybersecurity workforce study, right? You guys recently came out with your 2024 cybersecurity workforce study. Tell us about it, John.
A little bit of a history. We've been running this a good number of years. And what we were aiming to do and still aiming to do and do is sort of sense check where the industry is with regards, skills, workforce gap, what's required looking forward. So this year's report, a few headlines actually came out of it, actually. So it's the first time, I think, ever that we've seen broadly stagnation in the number of people within the profession. So it only grew by 0.1%. Usually we're either high single or low double digits growth in terms of the number of people in cybersecurity. But that actually stagnated. So a couple of areas contracted slightly. So US, UK, others grew a little bit. So UAE and some of the Asian markets grew. But on balance, globally stagnated, which was kind of interesting in its own right. And then we look at kind of what's needed in terms of resources to deliver a safe and secure cyber world, and that's the gap. That actually grew away from us, ending up at about 4.8 million. That's not job roles that are available to go into now. That's what we think the number of people would be needed to bring us to a safe state. So that was the kind of headline. Little bit of stagnation in the actual number of people in the profession. The gap, the need for us is still growing away from us. Probably a couple of reasons around that. Economic pressures. We've seen global economics put us under pressure. And in other industries, we're seeing layoffs. At least we're staying roughly in stasis. And geopolitical uncertainty. When you sort of see some of those factors come in, there's usually a little bit of a contraction, and organizations protect capital and make sharper investment decisions, and sometimes that's around workforce type stuff. But it does show that absolutely is a need for our profession and everyone in it. And please, more join.
Absolutely. Well, but there's also sort of it's funny. We did a live Techstrong gang this morning covering the election here in the U.S. Yesterday. And one of the topics was, well, what effect will this have on cybersecurity? And you mentioned anytime there's uncertainty, right? People tend to start holding dollars closer to their vest. People want to see how things play out. Though there seems to be some irrational exuberance this morning on the stock market. We'll see how long that lasts. But the interesting thing about cyber is in uncertain times, you want to double down on cyber, you would think, right? Because that risk, people become less risk adverse.
Yeah. So one of the stats in the report was, and we asked nearly 16,000 professionals their opinion, was it's probably the worst environment we've been in the last 5 years. So we're definitely seeing the threat environment being very stressy for us. So maybe you're right, in times of uncertainty, you want to double down. It's definitely an express need for our profession to exist and to secure stuff. If we go into a little bit into politics, in most jurisdictions and countries, it's a bipartisan issue. No one's arguing. One's arguing for cybersecurity and another one's arguing, no, you don't need it. Every political party and walk of life is sort of saying, no, it's actually critical to to economic well-being, societal well-being, etc. So, we do benefit from, at least we're not a political football in that sense, is that all parties recognise the value. How we go to get that and get people into the profession and protect stuff may be up for a little more of a debate, but the core need is generally expressed there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John, I always find with these kinds of studies, there's always one thing that just seems really counterintuitive, right? That it's like, wow, didn't see that coming. Didn't have that on my bingo card. Was there anything in the study this year that kind of you didn't have on your bingo card?
I think two things. One I kind of did, but it played out in a way that was a little less obvious, and that was the kind of need for AI skills. So I think the fact that they were on there and on the list and high on the list, I think either number one or number two, wasn't the surprising bit. The surprising bit is, but there's a sentiment came through is we don't quite know how to fulfill this, and we don't quite know what that skill looks like specifically, but we know we're being asked for it, and we know the wider business wants to execute on that. So that's for cyber leaders, that's a lean in moment, right? Which is, okay, so we're being asked to, how should we adopt AI in a business sense? How do we secure it, make sure it's lower risk? So that's a lean in moment, but that's kind of a little bit of we know we're in there, but we don't know enough, kind of came through a little bit. The one that sort of really twisted my brain a bit was the average age of a practitioner. Actually went up to, I think it was 39.
What's the average age?
Which is the average age, or a new entrance, I think, or 39 to, I can't remember what the age, but there's an age range, and it was on the older side than I would have expected. Now, I could either read that as we're not attractive enough to new entrants at the younger end, or the actual positive side might be we might be attracting more career changers. And they bring a different viewpoint to that. And some people I know come into the industry have come in from changed over from finance or from other walks and sectors, and they bring business acumen, a different viewpoint that you can leverage in cybersecurity. So that was probably the one I looked at and went, oh, that's unusual. I didn't quite expect that.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's unusual to me too, because, John, people our age, right? People who were here, when we went to school, they didn't necessarily have cybersecurity majors or concentrations, or they didn't teach cyber in school, right? Like you, a lot of people got into cyber back then were network engineers, and cyber became part of their mission. Right? I had a firewall next to my router, or host intrusion stuff on my server or what have you. And then, I don't know, in the mid 2000s, early 2000 noughts as they call it, 2005, 2010, we started seeing formal education, I think, even in the K-12 level and in the university level, of cybersecurity skill sets. And all of a sudden, you had all these kids coming out of schools saying, hey, I got a degree in cybersecurity. And funny thing happened to them on the way to the job. It might have taken them till they were 39 to find their first job. Because you couldn't get a job without it. It was like this classic catch-22, right? I'm only looking for someone with 3 or 5 years experience. And how do you get it out of school if you don't have that experience? So I wonder if that isn't tied up into the numbers you're seeing here.
Quite possibly. We know from another study we did with hiring managers that there's the kind of the job description abuse, which is, I want an entry-level person, but I want them to have a college degree and a CISSP, which is right. College degree is 3 to 4 years, a CISSP is 5 years experience. That puts you in a bracket that's not entry level. So I think the sort of that barrier to entry, whilst softening, we do see it softening, can sadly still be there. Part of why RC2 did the certified in cybersecurity, which is moment of free certification, is to encourage more people into the profession. I always say, look, if you're a bit cyber curious and you might think it's for you, go and do the course, go and do the exam, and you'll find out. Some people go, well, that might not be for me, but more actually go, I'm really interested, and they get a cert at the back of it. But yes, sort of entry pathways are probably one area where we need to do a little better to show the way and make it a little more obvious. I'm not sure that accounts for the complete shift in age bracket. But like I said, that's the one that kind of twisted me. I went, I can't quite understand it, but yeah, it's the data we have.
There is crazy. John, for people who maybe want to grab, I imagine hiring managers, but cyber folks as well. For people who want to grab a copy of this study, is it available on the ISC?
The workforce study is freely available. So if you just go to ic2.org, you'll probably find it on the homepage. If not, a quick search for workforce study, you will find it. As a security pro, a big bonus for me, there's no form entry. We don't try and capture your details. You can just go and read it. Yeah, I know it's a big one. I'm not saying that all of our reports are like that, but this one is like that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, and you can go. We've got some studies on AI and hiring managers. AI is an interesting one as well. It gives you some cool. And also, there's a lot of AI stats in the workforce study around where it sits. And interesting.
It sucks the oxygen out of every discussion we have. So
I know you can't not be in cybersecurity unless you're talking about AI.
Oh no, it's not just. I don't think you could be in IT if you're not talking about
true.
AI today. It's everywhere. Anyway, hey John, thanks for coming on and being our guest here on Techstrong TV. Continued success as the missionary CISO, right? The very first CISO at ISC2. And don't be a stranger and coming here on Techstrong TV.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the invite and spending the time. I'd love to come back and speak to you.
Anytime. Very well. Hey, John France, CISO at ISC2 here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, back right here in San Diego for our Qualys Security Conference coverage. They're coming fast and furious right about now. People wanting to get in, I guess, before lunch. But my next guest is Alex Kryline. Alex, you were with us, I don't want to say 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago?
It was, actually, we met when I was a prospective customer of VMDR before it came out. I used to.
This had to be like
2017.
I was going to say before COVID.
Yeah.
Way before COVID.
Yeah.
So look at you now.
I know. I feel great.
So what have you been doing since 2017?
I've been running a lot and traveling.
Don't we all?
Yeah. I've had a really actually amazing stretch in part thanks to great cybersecurity products. I was a CISO at a cloud native SaaS company for about 3 years. We were in the emergency communications space, so stuff that's got to work.
Yep.
And then I had the opportunity to go to Microsoft and worked on the Azure platform and followed a wonderful colleague and friend who's my boss, Jonathan Troll. I came over to Qualys and I've been running product security here for just over 2 years.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's quite a journey, man.
It's been cool.
Good for you.
Thank you.
When we say product security, you're responsible to make sure that the Qualys product itself is secure.
Yeah.
So like from a software supply chain perspective.
That's definitely one of the avenues. So
absolutely.
My responsibility is to make sure that what we ship to the market is safe and secure and of high quality. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who are part of that process. I'm a person who does that. I built the strategy and process and framework to get that done. And I did it in part using Qualys products, and I did it in part using lots of other products. It's a complex problem.
Yes, it is. So when you say you did it using Qualys products, let's jump into. I know you're speaking here today about something. We're going to get into that, but now you've piqued my curiosity.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we are enthusiastic about with the release of Enterprise TruRisk Management, which is really like a solid aggregation and decision-making framework, we get to bring Qualys products like Web Application Security for dynamic application security testing, policy compliance, and probably like 4 or 5 other products in our ecosystem, like infrastructure as code analysis, the things that developers need to build products that are secure and safe. We get to now bring that into the ETM platform, which will be dogfooding with our own teams.
Sure.
But the outcome that we're trying to achieve is security, but also flow. I need to give a high degree of velocity to my developers, or they won't want to do the work. that I'm
You
asking
just
them to do.
become the anchor on the ball and chain on this.
There's healthy friction, then there's unhealthy friction, and too much of that turns into fire. And so what we try and do through our security by design approach is to loop in technology that both we build and then buy in the open market, along with process like threat modeling, architecture reviews, and then kind of different controls around automation to help developers get the outcome that they want. We are on a maturity model of this. It doesn't work perfectly today like anybody else, but you start small and effectively, and then you build fast.
I've been in security 30 years.
Yeah.
If anyone ever told me they were done,
Yeah.
I'd say they're full of beans anyway. So you're never done.
Sure.
That's fantastic. It's really good stuff. And, in many ways, this mirrors Qualys's customer's own journey.
Yeah, it does.
Especially for ones who, today every company's a software company. We all build apps and so forth. And it's mirroring that. So, that's what we're dealing with. Alex, you're presenting here.
Yeah.
Let's hear about what you're presenting on.
Awesome. So a lot of the market is super focused in vulnerability management. It's obviously we're here to talk about, but there are a lot of vulnerabilities that are not easy to detect with any kind of automation. And those vulnerabilities are about design. Sometimes bad and ineffective design principles, like 2 applications communicating inside of the same trust boundary with wildly different security models. Or sometimes they're around like the supply chain that you brought into your application, right?
And today that's more prevalent than ever.
Yeah. So part of what I'm talking about is our decision-making process for how we identify those architectural weaknesses, work to make them specific problems for developers to work with us on addressing, give them feedback, and then ship improvements. The other side of that, though, is a customer-facing feature roadmap. So it's not just about the non-functional stuff like, hey, use these cryptographic ciphers or these libraries or like adopt this policy framework or, ingest it this way. It's also about making sure that the product that we ship is safe for the customer experience. Here's what I mean by that. There's the security of the platform, cool. Then there's the security on the platform, the customer's use of it. So like the identity and authentication management, how we report CVEs when we make a defect or a mistake in our product. It's also things like making sure that we can kind of automatically update customers' passwords if we find them exposed in the dark web. So what this is about is the practices about delivering security for the customer's experience while using our products, not just keeping the platform safe and secure.
Got it. So, yeah, I had a bunch of questions here as you were going. They were just running through my mind. So one of the things, I want to talk about SBOMs.
Yeah.
Right? Our audience is very familiar.
Totally.
Qualys products come with SBOMs now?
Qualys products can come with SBOMs. Qualys products will come with more freely available SBOMs in probably Q1 or Q2. One of the things that we're doing based off of, actually, maybe let me back up for a second. So CISA, probably about 9 months ago, announced that they were doing a Secure by Design pledge.
Yes.
We're one of the early companies to take that pledge because we know it's valuable to the customers and to the market. It aligns with one of our goals. Well, actually, it aligns with 3 of our Security by Design goals. One of which is making it prohibitively expensive for attackers to exploit Qualys and its customers using our products. Mm-hmm. Software bill of materials are about, obviously, the supply chain and provenance by which we received all of those artifacts. What we are looking at doing is figuring out not just how to ship software bill of materials, but how to make the discussion about vulnerabilities more productive between the software producer and the user. So we're looking at delivering SBOMs and XPDX and Cyclone DX, but also having a VEX file or a vulnerability exploitability exchange file riding along with that to tell the user if this CVE is indeed applicable or not, right? It's not just about vulnerability, it's about exposure. We need to help people understand if they are exposed by using a product that we built that has a defect. And so what we seek to do is build a more perfect method of communicating around that.
Love it. I love it. Wanted to talk about the next thing, which is, this is all about risk. And to a certain extent, risk is about trust. I've got to trust. When you tell me this reduces my risk by 10%, 20%, I got to trust. There's a certain level of trust that's necessary for me to buy into that.
Yeah.
That nowhere is that more important than in buying security products.
I think that's probably right.
Right? Recent events, not naming names, CrowdStrike, right? And it's not their fault. It could happen.
It happens.
It happens. But that erodes trust.
Yeah.
And that's such an important piece of it. Now, Secure by Design is made to instill trust in my customer, in your customers, customers in period. How do you, without getting too crazy, but how do you make sure we don't have a blue screen of death incident?
Yeah. So you're definitely going to be coming to my talk at 3:45.
Okay.
One of the, there are some so the problem statement that I heard you say is, how can I trust your SaaS, right? You built it, I bought it, I use it, I have no real ability to get visibility into it. So getting away from the first part, which is usually the identity and access management part, how do I get onto the platform? Then the next question is, how can I get some sense of control? One of the things that we'll be releasing in Q1 or Q2 is the ability for customers to lock a manifest to a specific version or to an N-X policy, right? Mm-hmm. So in the CrowdStrike issue specifically, they shipped a content update that led to a pretty significant technology exposure. Customers couldn't test for that. They just accepted the update, right? We think that a better approach to solving that problem is to give customers choice, allowing them the opportunity to test and evaluate before applying it, right? In the same way, we also believe that we should be giving customers their audit and security logs so that they can ingest that into their SIM and determine if they have an active exposure on our product.
Absolutely. And the funny thing, Alec, is that's the way it used to be.
Yeah.
You used to, you would get your Microsoft Patch Tuesday. No one applied the patches on Tuesday.
Totally.
You know what I mean? We would test them. Some organizations would take a couple days, some would take a week, some would take months.
Yeah.
Whatever floats, whatever works for your particular risk profile.
The challenge with some of this though is the customer is inherently accepting a different risk though, right?
Yeah.
When they choose to not install updates, that means that they're not getting the most current version of our detections, leaving them potentially exposed to certain risks like a 0-day or
so I've had these conversations with Fortune 100 CIOs, and their attitude is yes, but it's about measuring risk. And the risk of me being exposed to something for a few more days than I already was exposed to it versus the risk of me taking down a major portion of my network with something, they're not equal.
I mean,
and I make my decision on that.
I'm going to get it close, but I think I read certainly less than 10% of CrowdStrike's customers were exposed to the incident. And it was a world event, right? So obviously I think customers need to have risk-informed choice making. It's their risk to accept, right? We also just need to make sure that they're informed about the other side of the coin when they make those choices. But people should be able to make the choices that they need. It's their business.
Someone should have told the Delta CEO that.
I will keep myself quiet.
I'm neat here. I'm allowed to say stuff like that. You can't.
It's a hard business.
It is. And again, I know George Kurtz a long time from Foundstone.
Yeah.
And that could happen to anyone. Stuff like that happens. But there was a time in our industry where we didn't just blindly apply patches and update stuff. We tested and
different trust models. I'm our first customer at Qualys.
Are you?
The team. Well, we are customer zero, the quality
Right,
security
you are
team.
the customer zero.
We get the first ones, and we have an amazing security operations team that tests and evaluates all the things that we take in. That puts us in a real special place. I like to think that because of that, I have a little bit of the voice of the customer, and I try and advocate for them through the work of Secure by Design.
Very cool. Alex, a pleasure seeing you,
Oh,
man.
thank
You
you.
look great.
Thanks,
it's
man.
good to have you,
You
here.
too.
Thank you.
We don't talk about that enough. You look great too.
I talk about it all the time. But that's
Awesome.
me. Yep. Hey, we're live here in San Diego. We're going to take, I think, a quick lunch break, and we'll be back with a lot more Qualys interviews and content coming up for the rest of this afternoon. You're watching Techstrong TV.
Hello and welcome to the Techstrong AI podcast. I'm Amanda Rosani, and with me today is Srini Rajamani. He is the Senior Vice President and Sector Head of Consumer and Life Sciences at Wipro. How are you doing?
Delighted to be here. Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Glad you're here, doing well. So can you share a little bit about Wipro? What services do you provide?
Certainly. Wipro is a $10.8 billion New York Stock Exchange listed company with a suite of services that extends across applications, artificial intelligence, business processes, cloud, consulting, cybersecurity, data analytics, digital experiences, engineering, and sustainability.
Wonderful. Well, we have our topic of the day, which is AI in retail. So I want to get down to it. I know unstructured data is a real difficult issue amongst companies, how to harness all that data, especially in real time. So can you share from your experience, what are you hearing from business leaders as far as their struggles with this?
Great question, Amanda. What we are observing is the consumer expectations are evolving from nice to have demands to essential experiences, omni-channel conveniences, personalizations, and a positive in-store experience, which is no longer just a nice to have, it's a must have. And consumer retention rates are as high as 89% for those retailers with strong omni-channel strategies. 63% of consumers say that a positive in-store experience will make them more likely to buy from them online, and 80% look for tailored experiences. So clearly, for a lot of consumers, having to make sense of this data that they actually share with a lot of the retailers, and the retailers actually making sense of it and having customized experiences, those are becoming very critical. A lot of it is unstructured, and the quicker that we can actually bring it all together makes for a more meaningful relationship between the retailer and its consumer.
So what makes it so hard to harness that unstructured data specifically, and what advice do you have for company leaders?
A lot of this unstructured data is actually stored in different places, in different formats. There are certain rules and regulations about using some of these things. What do we do to bring in actually a unified approach to bring this all together? That's the critical angle, right? Whether it's around range of products, assortment of products, pricing of products, campaigns. Can you do a seamless product discovery for the client? Can you do a 360-degree personalization for the client based on the data that you have? And they allow you to use smart returns, post-purchase insights. These are all meaningful experiences that could be created, but it's not that easy because you got to bring a lot of this together and actually make sense out of it. And that's the critical angle here.
So we're hearing a lot about AI. It's advancing rapidly over the last 2 years. AI promises to solve so many issues. How can AI be harnessed in this instance?
That's a very good question. In fact, AI could be used for a variety of parts of the retail experience and the store experience. And what we have observed is it could start with something as simple as, say, a self-checkout, a kiosk customer assistant to interact with the customers in a spoken language. Suppose they're traveling to an airport where they don't understand a local language. Could I use AI for that? and it could actually reduce the in-person interaction on product information, answer related to any questions, issue resolution, empathetic query resolution for the stressed consumers of today, or it could be a quicker way in which they check out from the store. In fact, one of the things that we have also observed is consumer behavior insights and providing, actually reducing customer churn because of this, providing best offer analytics. These are all reducing to, the customer churn. We are also providing, in fact, what we are observing is experience design, advisory, implementation, managed services to help retailers enable a seamless omni-channel personalized customer experience by blending capabilities across marketing, commerce, and customer experience.
And so AI definitely helps with that customer experience. Is there a way to use AI to help with harnessing and capturing all the data and sorting through it?
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of that data right now resides in different places, but if I could bring them all together, and I'll give you some examples. We've actually designed a unified customer intelligence and contextual experience that integrates customer data silos from multiple touch points. And it could be first-party data, third-party data. Can you derive an insight of shopping preference and build customer intelligence and deliver, I would almost say, a hyper-contextualized experience to lift your conversion rates and to drive loyalty? These are two important things on which a lot of retailers actually scale, which is, can I convert them quickly rather than have shopping carts that are left abandoned? Can I drive loyalty? Can I bring him back to my store or my website on a consistent basis? And these are some of the things that we are observing are some of the outcomes that are being driven through AI.
We hear a lot about intelligent AI chatbots helping with customer issues. How close are we to just letting those chatbots run free and not needing any oversight?
It's a very good question. I would say we made progress, but we're not at the perfect stage where a chatbot can actually be running on itself. There's definitely human oversight involved here. We have seen, for example, can I do a customer data platform and provide a fairly rich interaction with the client over a chatbot? Can I have the chatbot measure and manage these relationships? And they may be able to answer some standard questions, but sometimes I'm also observing some of the questions might be non-standard. Some of them questions might be related to inventory that you may or may not have. So how do I connect a lot of these systems and are able to provide information? As long as the chatbot is able to provide an empathetic back and forth with that client where they feel like they've been listened to and they're getting what they're asking for, they're more likely to come back. But I don't think we're full. I think the utopian concept of a chatbot actually replacing a human being fully, I don't think they're there yet.
So when it comes to implementing new AI technologies in a company, what are some of the struggles that companies have and what advice do you have for them?
So one thing that we are observing, for example, in Gen AI, can you use Gen AI to enrich a product attribute? And can you generate a smarter product description from external sources? And it could be from a marketplace, it could be from social media. And can you enable a single view of the product across the enterprise that can power a consistent and impactful product and content experience across all digital touchpoints? Easier said than done. We've seen in some places, this also leads to a higher conversion. The other one is commerce modernization. Can a retailer modernize their legacy commerce solution via a microservice or a cloud enablement? That's another thing that we are seeing. If that can scale, that's another thing which I believe is clearly the future that a lot of companies are looking at. We're working with actually a US electronics retailer, and this has actually powered their digital revenue growth. But I think there's a lot of headroom for growth here.
So this may be really far out in the future, but I envision a time where we can go online and we can have an AI shopping assistant that's helping us pick out things, and we can just use our voices to talk to this AI assistant and say, do you have it in red? Do you have it in green? Okay, put that in the cart in this size. How far out do you think something like that is? And are retailers looking at that type of technology?
Actually, they are. Amanda, that's a really good insight. You will actually observe that it's not that far away. We actually have retailers that might have customers walk into their showrooms and experience their clothes real time. Could be, for example, have them put these clothes on through a virtual try on and decide that, you know what, instead of the blue top, can I do it in a red top? How does that look for me for a party that I have this evening? And the mirror gives you the information that you need via your phone or any way you're interacting with it. And that's AI ML accelerators that we are seeing. And these are committed investments that we can see companies making. We are working with some of our clients on some of these things. And these are, if you ask me, these are retail solutions that drive a higher conversion. They also bring in a higher lifetime value through enhanced experiences. And there are also cost advantages to this because it's smart, it's responsive, and these virtual assistants actually help you deliver or discover chic trends that store associates can actually work with them to take it to the next level. It can help you from a smart store sourcing standpoint. So for example, if a store is selling goods of a certain type, size, color, or variety, they can actually order those rather than have goods that are sitting on the store shelf and getting wasted. So there are a lot of AI ML accelerators that we use, which are actually powered through any of the new technologies that we have through AR, VR to make this real for our clients and not that far in the future.
That's really cool. All right. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
I think the future is here. We're looking at autonomous checkout experiences where you are working with a retail store assistant is actually your checkout point. And you actually already see this in some stores. Can I step in and step out of the store without having to interact with a buyer assistant? Can I, for example, have equal experiences, online store experiences, and there's actually a connect between both of those visits by the retailer? These are all stuff that we are seeing from an AI-infused strategy. This is leading to business transformation. And we are seeing that AI is actually unlocking a huge amount of business value across the retail value chain. And it could lead to revenue uplifts across online and stores. It could improve customer loyalty. And most importantly, it'll also lead to an efficient retail operation, thereby reducing the cost to serve. So clearly we're seeing a whole lot of these things happening in fairly short order. And we're seeing this globally. So it's not just stateside or in Europe. You're actually seeing this in Asia. So you're actually seeing a consistent experience across brands, across different countries. So which is pretty unique. Earlier, it used to have these disjointed experience across stores in different locations. Now you're actually seeing a consistent experience that's coming across.
That's amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing your insights with us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more.
I'm Bonnie Schneider, sustainability contributor to the Techstrong Group. I'm excited to introduce you to a groundbreaking new initiative from Techstrong Research, the Sustainability Pulse Meter. The Pulse Meter offers valuable insights into how environmental responsibility factors into tech purchasing decisions for key players in the industry. Position your company as a leader in the industry and differentiate from your competitors with the Sustainability Pulse Meter, offered exclusively from Techstrong Research.
Hi everyone, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick, Research Director with the Futurum Group, and I'd like to welcome you to Enterprising Insights. It's our weekly podcast that explores the latest developments in the enterprise software market and the technologies that underpin these platforms, applications, and tools. This week, I'd like to talk about Adobe Max, which is the annual conference that's focused on the new innovations and the creative community that uses Adobe products. This is an event that happens each year. Actually, this year is the first year that they actually held it in Miami, Florida, after normally being out in Los Angeles. It's a large event. I think it's something like 10,000 attendees. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the new announcements that came out of the conference that resonated with me, give you my overall impressions about the event, and then we'll discuss kind of what we'll be watching from Adobe in the coming months. So then, of course, I'll get into my rant or rave segment where I pick one item in the market and I will either champion it or criticize it. So let's get right into it. So Adobe Max, as I mentioned, we were in lovely Miami Beach, which is a nice change from Los Angeles. And Adobe really took this conference as an opportunity to talk about some new features, but also kind of refocus its messaging on creators, which is sort of a core, the core of their basic user groups. Essentially, when you think about creators, they're the artists, the designers, the sound editors, the video creators within organizations that use their products. In the past, over the past, I don't know, probably a couple of years, there's been a lot of messaging around what Adobe could do for enterprises. You know, what it can do for things like content scalability, utilizing new technology to improve productivity and efficiency and all of that. And of course, all of those messages are certainly resonating in the market, given this desire and this need to create more content more quickly, over a wider range of variations, different regions, that sort of thing. But in some ways, I think the perception was that Adobe kind of did not do a good enough job, kind of talking to their creators, talking to the people who actually utilize the product to create new art, to create new campaigns, that sort of thing. So at this event, they explicitly reached out and basically said to their users, hey, we appreciate you. We, are certainly working to do everything we can to not incorporate new products that will put you out of a job, but will help you do a better job, but will help you do things more efficiently, that will help remove sort of the boring, repetitive tasks that nobody wants to do, and really let these creators focus on doing the things they want to do, which is, discovering new ideas, trying out new variations, basically focusing on the creation of new content as opposed to doing administrative tasks. So that was a really great message. It was, repeated several times throughout the event. And of course, it very much dovetails nicely with some of the new features and functions that they were announcing at the show. So really, they really announced a ton of different things at this. So I can't go through all of them. Certainly do check out Adobe's website in their press room to get a full rundown on all of the things that they announced. But I'm just going to go through a few things that really resonated with me. AI obviously was sort of the star of the show, as you can imagine. So one of the things that they announced is generative AI features that are being incorporated into their Creative Cloud application suite. So a lot of new AI features, generative AI features, are being incorporated in core applications like Photoshop or Premiere Pro. And one of the things that was really interesting in Premiere Pro, which is their video creation editing application, is the ability to extend video clips seamlessly. Now, what do I mean by that? So let's say you're working on a campaign where you have a 30-second spot and you have various images coming in and you're going through and you're putting everything together, and then you realize that there is a 5-second gap where you don't have any content. You have music going underneath, you have a story kind of going through, but the clips that you have just aren't long enough in duration. Well, this new feature allows, through generative AI, to extend that video clip so it seamlessly looks like it's almost like a continuation of the action or motion within the clip. that's generated through AI to really kind of help fill those gaps. So amazing technology. And the most interesting thing about it is, unlike a lot of generative AI tools or features that have been announced, not just from Adobe, just in general, this is something that really is, that addresses an unmet need. If you think about it, video is really challenging because once you've shot video, it's very difficult. If you know anything about the way a lot of these things work, it's very difficult to go out and reshoot original content. A lot of times what happens is you wind up having to reuse existing shots, or maybe you're not necessarily using the best shots if you're trying to fill gaps. This is a great way to allow a designer or a video designer to take a clip they really like and make sure that it fits the spaces that they have. So really interesting feature there. The other thing, of course, is Adobe announced a new Firefly video model, which is, essentially, this is that technology, the underlying technology that allows video to be generated from a text prompt. So if you think about, the use of generative AI to create images, photos, that sort of thing, it's very similar. This will allow the creation of video simply from a text prompt. And the most important thing to remember about it is not just the fact that it can be done, but it's being done in a safe way. And by safe, I mean that the video model is only trained on either licensed content within Adobe stock or images that are royalty free. And that's rare that we're going to find that. But this is really important because if you think about the use of video in a commercial setting, it is absolutely critical that any content that is incorporated into this, into a campaign, that it is basically cleared. It is licensed, paid for, so there's no possibility of infringement upon, someone else's work that was not credited. The other thing that's particularly important is making sure that you're not infringing on other IP rights. Meaning, if you were to say, I would like to generate an image of two people sitting down at a restaurant enjoying, a soda together. Well, the problem is if you just train models on images from wherever that are not properly labeled, you may wind up generating two people sitting at a table drinking a soda, but the soda, because of just the fact that it wasn't sort of vetted, it could actually have a brand on there, and that could be a real problem, particularly if, it's supposed to be used in a, in any kind of a commercial campaign. So the idea here is to make sure that the model is only trained on licensed content and there are proper controls applied so that when you ask to have a generic image generated, it doesn't come back with branded content that you shouldn't be using. So that was a really interesting announcement. There are a couple other things that really kind of struck a nerve with me. There are some new collaboration tools that were announced with Frame.io. Frame.io is their application that allows folks to collaborate on various video projects. So, for example, if you were to record a video and you wanted your client to go through and make annotations, make this section longer, cut this out, make this cut look, more seamless. That is the tool that allows that collaboration to do it within a platform where the video is running. So it's, a real sort of, a way to streamline that collaboration process with video. Now, they also announced some new camera integrations that allow for a direct upload from Canon, Nikon, and Leica cameras. That's really important because there's a direct link in the field from the camera to the cloud, so you don't have to go back to your studio and upload it. But even more importantly, these cameras are also supporting the Content Authenticity Initiative, which incorporates metadata to show the source of the image, and then, of course, it captures any other data that's in terms of, was this image modified by AI or not? Is this a composite? That sort of information. And that is really important for many organizations in terms of, making sure that, if someone is interested, they can identify, is this particular image, what is behind this image? It doesn't necessarily mean truth or not a true image or not, because that's all based on context. But you can assess that, okay, the image was taken at this date, at this time, at this location. Now, some of the other, credentials in there can be modified. For example, there was a great example of where you might not want to have the photographer's name attached. If, let's say, they are working as a photojournalist in a conflict region, they may not want their address and phone number and name attached to that photo, because that could put them in danger. But at any rate, all of these new enhancements are designed to, again, create, essentially streamline the creation of content, make it easier for folks to work on that content together collaboratively. Now, there were a couple other announcements that really kind of were interesting there. Adobe announced Gen Studio for Performance Marketing. This is a new application that leverages AI to optimize the entire marketing content creation process, from planning through measurement. What does all that mean? Essentially, if you think of content and using it for various campaigns these days, it's not about this, mass marketing approach that was taken several decades ago. The idea is that you want to reach out to people and reach the right segment of people, and then make sure that you're appealing to them in a very personalized way. And that all requires data. And what Gen Studio for Performance Marketing does, it is designed to make it easy to have one place where a marketer can go in, find the audiences that they want, segment those audiences, and then incorporate various data from their own sort of data sources to then personalize that, to make sure that campaigns go out to the right segments and have the right elements there, all on a single platform. And of course, because it's part of the Adobe ecosystem, is part of the platform, it's very easy to integrate and pull content from a variety of different places, whether we're talking about the Adobe Experience asset management system, or the Content Hub Studio, or assets that are being worked on in different applications. The goal is to provide a sort of a single platform to make it easy to grab all those assets without having to make 1,000 copies where you're not sure which generation is the right one. So that's an interesting announcement. I'll have more on that later in subsequent podcasts. But ultimately, the main thing to remember about that is Adobe is trying to make it easy for marketers and creators to work together, and then to quickly take all of these assets and then really activate them in marketing campaigns. Now, the last thing that I'll mention here that was really interesting is something called Project Neo. And this is something we got a preview of. It's not available yet, but it is a technology that allows the creation of 3D images in a 2D space. It allows, basically, the goal is to make it easier for 2D artists to transition into creating 3D art. And I actually saw a demo of this on stage, and it was really interesting because they were taking an image, incorporating different elements, and really allowing that creator to make very realistic 3D models that not only looked great, but where each element was able to be controlled as sort of a separate layer, allowing it to be reused, resized, repositioned, getting different angles, all of that kind of stuff, which is very important, particularly as content is sort of the core assets of content are increasingly being reused in different media, both in static still imagery as well as in video. And the creation of 3D art and objects is sort of a key to unlocking, additional eyeballs, because it is pretty interesting to look at. Now, I think there's a couple of things that are kind of overriding in this whole conference that are interesting. And I sort of alluded to it earlier, but when we think about Adobe, it is a very, very powerful platform. It is obviously geared to enterprise use. And I think that's really important to think about. What are the elements there? Well, obviously, it's robust, it's scalable, and increasingly, if you think about the types of content that is being, worked on, created, these files are really, really large. So when we talk about large files, we're talking about massive, massive video files that honestly, if you were to move them around, it's going to take a lot of time. If you're going to copy them, it's going to take up a lot of space, and you could wind up having issues in terms of, which generation you're working on, who is, changing what elements. So the idea that this is a single platform where there's one spot to go for that asset, and people can basically go in and modify that within a single platform, that's sort of a huge benefit to using an Adobe, product versus some of the other ones out in the market. And I don't mean just in terms of creation, but I mean about actually, going outside of the creation part and actually getting into the activation part, which is looking at sort of the marketing solutions. And again, does this matter as much for small organizations? Not currently, but I think it will in the future. And the reason for that is with all of these tools, particularly generative AI, it is going to become much more cost efficient for designers and marketers to create not just a couple of dozen variations, but hundreds or even thousands of variations on a single asset. So you can have different assets in different formats for things like Instagram or Facebook or the web or text or what have you. But then you could also have variations based on region and language. And then you can actually segment that even further in terms of, well, maybe one asset would be designed to appeal to people in a specific generation or a specific gender or what have you. The combinations or the possibilities are almost endless in terms of how many different ways you could segment the market. Up until generative AI, it was almost impossible to create variations for all of that because it just took too much time. You'd have to have a designer going through and manually changing all of those elements every time you want to have a variation. Now, with generative AI, you're actually able to create variations at scale. And that is sort of one of the core messaging points about Adobe and generative AI. It's not just that it really allows people to, create things from, let's say, a text prompt. It's really about improving scale, by allowing designers to basically create, hundreds of variations on a single asset very, very quickly instead of, forcing them to do that manually. Now, I'd also just mention an interesting point about, using generative AI to create initial assets versus using generative AI to, to create variations. I think we're at an interesting point in the market right now where very few creative teams, I think, are using generative AI as sort of the genesis of their ideation phase. I think most are still, doing it the old-fashioned way where they have an idea and maybe they'll sketch something out and create the concept that way from their own mind. We might just start to see that shift a little bit, but I still think there's a lot of pride and a lot of value in having ideas come, directly from the minds of creators instead of having it be somewhat derivative by using a generative AI text to image or text to video tool. We'll have to see where the market goes, but that's my sense now. I've talked to several creators on site there who also tended to agree with that approach. And that being said, Adobe has incorporated tools making it very easy to capture the let's say a line drawing of a particular image and pull that into Adobe so it can be modified, reused, changed, in terms of taking it from a static sort of analog drawing to a piece of digital art where the different elements can be separated into different layers and modified. So I think Adobe realizes that as well. What else? I think there is another thing that I think I should address here is Adobe really focused on announcing a ton of things, more things that I haven't even had time to talk about today. And I had attended a couple of Adobe events earlier in the year, and I spoke with some creators, and there was, there definitely were people who were talking to me who said, I like Adobe, but I feel that in some ways with some of their products, they have fallen behind some of their competitors in terms of the number of innovations and the functionality of their products. Now, it's always hard to validate whether or not that's accurate or not, but sometimes perception is reality. But I would say that Adobe did a great job of coming out and essentially overwhelming everyone with these new innovations now. I think it was very important to do that. This is normally the event at which they kind of roll out the dump truck and dump all these features that are, particularly interesting or have a lot of wow value to them. And I think they needed to do that because you do have some rivals out there like Figma, like Canva, which have continued to innovate and, in some ways are viewed as sort of being the more nimble upstarts. Now, that being said, I don't think anyone is going to argue that certain Adobe products, are clearly sort of leaders in the market. If you think of something like Adobe's video offerings there, like Premiere Pro, that's clearly a very, very popular application. I forget the exact statistic, but it has, a massive amount of market share. Most professional designers are choosing that platform. And I think all they need to do there is to show that they were continuing to innovate and incorporate new features there. Again, the most important thing for Adobe, I think, is the fact that they have positioned themselves as the safe vendor for companies looking to do commercial work and incorporate images and video that may have some element that has been generated through AI. They have a very strict approach, which is they will only train their models on content that has been licensed and is sitting in their stock, Adobe stock, or content that is royalty free, and that would be like public domain images. Now, they've had some challenges in the past, and they admitted it in terms of the messaging around their terms of use. They were a little confusing. I think a lot of this is a combination of two things. One, Adobe could have been a little clearer when they revised their terms of use, terms of service. And the other thing is that I think just in general, sometimes the community, the creative community, will see something, not fully understand it, and then assume the worst. And then, of course, like anything else these days, they hop on their message boards and things kind of go viral in the wrong ways. I still believe that Adobe is taking the right approach and is probably one of the safest, if not the safest platform for folks to, to use generative AI to create video, text, what have you. Now, that being said, if they wind up having issues, again, with content that is being generated and it's either violating, any kind of IP, or if it's spewing out toxic material, Adobe's going to have to deal with that again. And, hopefully they've learned from sort of past slight missteps. I think they have. But, that's something where I really do believe that most organizations out there realize that Adobe is, sort of a leader in the space and has taken a very strong approach by saying, when we're going to use AI, at the very start, we're going to make sure that we only train on content that we believe is safe to be used. This kind of stands a little bit in contrast with some rivals. Canva, for example, takes a wider approach to incorporating content and ingesting content into its models. And then once it's in their, in their model, they will go through and, address it by going through and, making adjustments to make sure that, there aren't, the model does not return any sort of IP, does not violate any IP or does not return inappropriate images, that sort of thing. And again, they claim that that's, been an effective way to deal with that issue. Again, it's hard to say which approach is the best, but I think generally speaking, it's always easier to say we're only going to use licensed imagery and we're going to make sure that we, train and label our models from the get-go to avoid issues around IP violations toxic content or inappropriate images at the start, rather than sort of pulling them into the model and then apply some sort of moderation. I think the most, or the other thing that I think is really important here about Adobe is they are, I think, one of those companies that are very much focused on making sure that users are able to utilize their platform, which is very powerful and wide-ranging, in a very, very kind of simple way. And what they've done is made it so if you are, let's say, a designer, you can work in the application you like, whether it's Illustrator or Lightroom or Photoshop. And once you're done with that, you can save your work and it can be picked up through another application, through the DAM or what have you. And you don't need to do anything differently. This enables creative people to work in the applications where they feel comfortable. It allows marketers for them to work in the applications that they feel comfortable. And there's really only one sort of original asset instead of having versions being copied all over the place. That is not just a hallmark of Adobe, but it's also sort of points to a larger trend, which is meeting the customer, meeting that user where they are, and letting them do the work that they need to do in the application that they feel most comfortable. I think that's a huge win for Adobe, in terms of making it easy for folks to use the product where they want and how they want, based on the role that they have in the organization. Now, with all that said, I will say I did get a great, demo of their Content Hub, and, very comprehensive. And I was asking about certain features, and yeah, they have certain things that are kind of still in progress that I think, are going to need some additional work, largely around the incorporation of, certainly generative AI features to make them smoother, the ability to kind of track, where content is going, just basic little things like that. Nothing major. But I think the most important thing that I got out of this, they were willing to listen. They were willing to say, okay, that's something we hadn't thought about. We're going to incorporate that. And that's also something that I think over the past, year or so, I think Adobe's gotten better at, really kind of trying to listen to their customers as they move forward in the market, because they realize they're getting more competition. So with that, if you want to learn more, I did publish a research note focusing on Adobe Max. You can find it at futurum.com. I'm also going to be revisiting several of these topics over the next several weeks and months. All right, with that, I would like to move to my rant or rave segment. This is where I pick one item in the market and I will either champion it or criticize it. And today I actually have a rant. This is more of a customer experience rant, and it goes to the issue of chatbots. And so I was trying to inquire about a certain number of points and rolling them over to certain dollar values within my airline loyalty program. I tried to do it through my app using the little chatbot, and I tried several times, still did not work properly. I think this points to an issue that, I'm not sure. I'm not going to identify the airline, but I can tell you it's a major U.S. carrier. I don't know which vendor they use for it. I'm just a little surprised because my request was not something that was terribly difficult. Essentially, I wanted to transfer points, convert points into basically, miles into points in the program. And it was a rollover thing. And there was a way to do it by calling up on the phone, but I was kind of surprised I couldn't even get something handled for something like this, which seems to be pretty common to happen through the app that didn't even recognize what I was asking for. It did, however, eventually kick me to a live human agent who was able to address my issue, and eventually it was taken care of. But I was just honestly surprised that with all of the talk about generative AI and the use of chatbots as a way to really kind of deal with customer issues, that it couldn't handle something this basic. I hope that this improves in the future, because ultimately, I did spend a fair amount of time on this task. And if you think about a customer like myself, who is a loyalty member with some status, it's pretty surprising that they wouldn't address an issue like this. So that is my rant for the week on that. All right, well, that's all the time that I have this week. So I want to thank you for joining me here on Enterprising Insights. We'll be back again soon to cover all of the happenings within the enterprise application market in the future. So with that, please be sure to review, rate, and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform, and we will see you again very soon. Thanks, and have a great day.
Hi everyone, welcome to Mastering Project Management with AI. I'm Narinder Daniwal. I'm the Senior Product Architect for Prince2 at PeopleSet. So welcome, let's talk all about AI in project management. So I want to start off by talking about projects and the importance of them. So within Prince2, the new 7th edition, you'll see that we say a project is a temporary organization that's created for the purpose of delivering one or more business products according to an agreed business case. So what does that actually mean? What we're saying here is that every organization, doesn't matter how big or small you are, you're going to need to undertake projects in order to introduce change, because that's what projects do. They help us to bring about change according to an agreed business case. No one's going to invest in delivering change if there isn't a business justification for it. So when we're investing in this change, we also need to recognize that projects are temporary pieces of work. They are significantly different to your operational business as usual environment. In that, we're going to be looking to deliver something specific. The example I'm going to use with you today is, imagine you're sitting at home and you want to redecorate your living room. Well, you live in that living room, you use it day in, day out, so that's technically your business as usual environment. But if you want to now change your sofas, your curtains, your carpet, the flooring, whatever it might be, you're going to need to do a project. So you're going to have to sit down, you're going to have to think about, well, okay, when am I going to do it? When am I going to start it? And when do I want it done by? Who am I going to need to help me to deliver that? Can I actually fit a carpet myself? And the answer is I certainly can't. So I'm going to need a carpet fitter. Can I do all the decorating work myself? Can I paint the walls and wallpaper the walls? And the answer is probably no. I'd like to give it a good go, but let's be realistic. If I don't want to waste my time and energy, I'm going to bring somebody in to do that. So that's what we mean by that second bit at the bottom when we talk about cross-functional. Within organizations, we're going to need to pull people in order to deliver that change. They're going to have certain types of skill sets. Now, projects are classed as unique. If I'm doing my living room, it's unique to me. It's not someone else's living room, it's mine. That's the same for organizations. It's unique to them, to their client, to their customer, to the end user. And the thing is, when we do these projects, they contain uncertainty. And when we say uncertainty, we're talking about risk. I don't know what I'm going to find when I pull up those carpets. I don't know what I'm going to find when I start pulling off the wallpaper. So there's a lot of risk involved that we need to try and manage. Now, in order to do that, we need project management. Project management is about applying the methods and the tools using certain techniques and competencies in order to deliver that project correctly. So what project management involves is you needing to sit down and do the planning, being able to delegate the work to the relevant people, being able to keep an eye on how things are going. So we talk about monitor and control. If I can see that things are slipping, it's not getting done to the deadline, I need to be proactive and not wait for that deadline to pass, but actually to try and take control of it so that I can mitigate it. But it also means we've got to try and keep our teams motivated. So notice that we say it's about the motivation of those involved in achieving our project objectives, because I want my team to be on the same level as me. I want them to do what we're trying to do for the same reasons. And I want them to be happy doing that work. We all know that if we're unhappy, you're not necessarily going to get the greatest results. But if you're enjoying what you're doing and you feel like you're being led properly and you've got the right environment, the right tools, all of those things, you're more motivated to get the job done. Now, what are the benefits of doing it right? Well, there's a better understanding of what needs to be done and what needs to be achieved. It means that we're going to increase the reliability of our plans. If I'm involving the right people in doing that planning work, the predictability is going to be higher. If I try to plan it by myself, I'm guessing, because I don't normally paint walls and stick wallpaper on the walls. So I might underestimate how much effort needs to go into it. So I need to make sure that that becomes a collaborative exercise. It means that by doing this, I'm putting together reliable information. I can report on the project's progress based on what I'm actually seeing. It means that I've got better control over the project. And as a project manager, I like to see myself as the conductor of the orchestra. I'm not playing the music. They are. I'm there to lead them. And I want to reduce the number of issues. By doing that, the way that we do that is by speaking to people, keeping the communication channels open. So the idea is that if something isn't happening as it should be, we need to be proactive about that. We need to try and preempt it through good risk management. Now, as a result of doing that, what will happen is your projects are more likely to deliver on time. They're more likely to be delivered within the budget that you've set. You're likely to deliver the right scope. So I said I wanted a new living room with new carpet, new furniture. That's what I should end up with. And it should be to the right level of quality. By giving me all of those things, I should be able to achieve the benefits that I said I was going to gain from doing this project. Notice what we've got on the slide. 97% of organizations believe that project management is critical to business performance and to organizational success. Remember what I said. In order for any organization to deliver any kind of change, be it small, be it large, they're going to have to undertake some kind of project. So let's look at some study figures that have been done, some research that was done last year in 2023. 1,000 project managers were asked a number of questions, and this is what we got back. So it was an independent research that was done. 61% of project managers felt that by using a project management method, it reduced the average project cycle times. 73% said it boosted their project's return on investment. 89% said it improved their customer satisfaction. And 95% said it improved their risk mitigation. Take that and look at the 96%. That's a pretty high percentage. 96% of project managers said that by using a project management method, they had higher project success rates. That speaks volumes. So we're here to talk about AI. And when we talk about artificial intelligence, we have been using it in our own lives for a long time. The last time you did an online shop, well, that's AI. When you're using your apps, that's AI. Look at the Tesla car and other cars like it. Other models are available, but that's AI. So it's been around for a while, but we're starting to see it being used more and more within the workplace. Things like email automation, document content, where it's automatically generated for you. We're using it more in recruitment to filter out good versus bad, potentially. And you've all heard of chatbots. We use those if we've got a problem, we have a computer that is generating the responses to us. So AI isn't something new. It's been around, but we're just starting to really adapt to using it more and more in our day-to-day lives. So when we talk about AI, there's 4 types of spectrums that we can talk about. We can talk about automation. So we're talking about robotic processes where we automate things. We can replace the use of people and a robot can do the work. We're talking about data analytics where it analyzes the data for us. Can you remember the last time you had to sit down and you had loads of facts and figures in front of you and you were asked to do some analysis? That is painstaking. Well, we can use data analytics to do that for us now. We've got generative AI. So this is where we've got algorithms that can recognize, it can summarize, it can translate, it can predict, and it can generate content for you. Or we've got the digital technology. And this is where we're talking about sensors and augmented reality, so the virtual reality world. So there's a lot of different types out there that we need to get our head around. When we talk about this within project management, the beauty of it is that we can use it to do planning as well as other things. So let's talk about planning first. We can help it to define our requirements, to take our user stories and turn them into a requirement, describe products, help it to do prioritization. We can use AI to help us do our budgeting and cost control and the estimates around it. We can use it to automate scheduling. So it can look at data and tell us whether there's going to be any conflict on our schedules, what the dependencies are, where we might need to move things around. We can use AI to help us do our resource allocation. So we can use it to think about where have I got not enough resource versus too much, who's sitting idle, and where have I got too much work on a particular person. So we talk about capacity planning, distribution of those tasks. It can also be used in doing scenario testing and simulations, the what-if side of things. If my plan does this, what would be the outcome? And of course, if you're trying to do that all on paper, it's going to be very, very difficult. So by using AI, it just makes things more efficient for you. We can also use it in risk management. So we can use it to do predictive analytics for us. So we can pump in historical data and say, right now, what would be the scenario if this happened? We can automate our risk assessments. We can do scenario testing. So this is where we tell it, what if this happens at this point in the future? What would be the outcome of that? Then it's great for giving us those simulations. We can also use it to actually come up with responses. How should I act based on knowing what this risk is? What could I do? Is there any way of avoiding it? Can I adjust it in any way by reducing its probability? Can I reduce the likelihood of it? We can use it for real-time risk monitoring. It can alert us when something is imminent, for example, or if conditions in the environment have changed, it can tell us, you need to take this on board, you need to action this now because this is what's going on around you. And we can use it to automate our risk reporting. If all the data is there, it can churn it out and give it to you in a more logical fashion. We can also use it in progress reporting. So I know from my experience, and I've been around a while, whenever I've had to do progress reports, it's painstaking. And it also means I'm not now delivering the project. I've had to go away from doing what I normally am employed to do, which is to monitor, control, delegate, and do all of those wonderful things. And I'm having to shut myself off for a little while to report. And that can be quite painstaking and quite time consuming. But we do need to report. Reporting is an essential part of project management. So here we're talking about real-time data generation. So if we're keeping everything updated on our system, it can churn the information out at the click of a fingertip. Data quality and consistency checks. It can check for inaccuracies for us. It can detect anomalies, deviations, and it can highlight for us any exceptions. We can use it as a way of forecasting what the project is going to end up doing if we don't make changes. It can be used to automate your report generation. If you've been asked you've got to do a progress report every week on a Friday by 5 p.m., we could use it to just automatically generate that and to send it out to the relevant parties. It can also be quite interactive with real-time visual dashboards. And that's really nice because there's nothing more boring than just having lots of word on a page. So if we can animate it in any way, we can make it look real time. That's going to make it more interesting for the stakeholders that are looking at those reports. AI is also very good for communication. It can be used to help us automate and create agendas for meetings. We can use it to take notes for us, so transcription. So if you use Teams, for example, at the moment within your organizations, you can record and transcribe. It's brilliant. It just keeps a record of everything you're saying. So it takes away from someone else having to sit there to write everything out. We can use it for real-time translation and interpretation. We can use it to automate our status updates. So think about being a stakeholder on a project. You need to know what's going on with that project. You want to speak to people. You never want to replace that. But sometimes you might just need some information that can be automated to you. It'd be nice to be able to get that at your fingertips. We can also use AI to do our presentations and documents for stakeholders. I love to use AI to help me think about ways to express words on a screen. Okay. So when I'm putting a presentation together like this one, I've been known to use AI to come up with words that I think, what's a simpler way of saying this? How could I say this in a different way? And AI has been there to the rescue. And of course, you've got your chatbots and virtual assistants. And we know that in today's world, all of the big corporate groups that provide us with this technology, they're all very heavily involved in AI, and they offer us lots of different ways of doing things. And it is a great communication tool because it helps us to clarify the message, strip out the extra stuff that's not necessary. And it just means that we're streamlining what we're having to say and what we need to say to our stakeholders. Now, you may have heard of Prince 2.7. We went live with that earlier. And that is already AI ready. So what do we mean by that? It means that within that current version, we've got lots of information around how you can use it. And it is ready. It enables you to use it through a digital and data management approach. So we talk about that in Prince 2.7. What you might not be aware of, and I really want to get this out there, is that we actually have a Prince 2 AI practice guide as well. And what that does is talk you through everything that I've just literally talked through, but to another level of detail. And the idea is that what we want you to be able to do is use Prince 2 for your governance and for your control, but also for agility, because we know that Agile's a big thing out there, and Prince 2 is Agile ready as well. And we want you to be able to use AI throughout it. Nothing in it should constrain you from using any kind of AI tools to help you do your reporting, to escalate things, to manage risk, to do your planning. All of these things are crucial within a project environment. So where you can adopt AI ways of working and use AI tools, we highly encourage it. We think it's brilliant because it frees you up to do the things you should be doing and that you need the time to be doing, like talking to stakeholders, like talking to your team, like agreeing and planning. So this should be seen as a tool that helps you rather than replaces you. Now, in a study that was done, it is estimated that 2.3 million new project professionals are going to be needed by the year 2030. And that's each year. Okay. And we're not just talking about project managers here. We're talking about support staff, team leaders, business analysts, PMO staff. If we're talking about Agile, we're talking about product owners, program managers, portfolio analysis. It is a massive industry. And the reason, I'll go back to what I said at the start, for any organization to introduce any kind of change, they're going to have to approach it as a project of some kind. They're going to have to set a budget aside. They're going to have to pull a team together. They're going to have to plan the work carefully. And they're answerable to their stakeholders and to the community and to, depending on industry sector, or to people, taxpayers. They've got to be able to justify why that money was spent. So it's really important that organizations get this right. And that's why they need to, and they are heavily investing in project personnel, because if one person can't do it all, as I said, we need it to be cross-functional. I cannot do my living room myself. I could give it a go. It'll probably take me about a year to do it. And is that good enough for me? Or would I like something done sooner within a certain time frame? So if I want to do it properly, I'm probably going to, and I will do, use project management with the right resources, the right skill set, and wherever possible, AI to simplify some of the more mundane tasks that I would normally have to invest heavily in. Now, I often get asked the question, what makes a great project manager? I always find this question quite interesting because I kind of fell into this position. And it was because my boss at the time, I used to work for DHL many years ago, said, you're really methodical and you're really organized and you're great at planning and risk management. And when I look at this slide, it kind of reminds me of that conversation I had a good 25 years ago. So you need to have project management skills, and that includes things like being able to estimate. How long is something going to take? How much is it going to cost? Being able to put a schedule together. So, a lot of people think, well, I'll use a Gantt chart. Well, okay, but the Gantt chart only tells me so much. And how do I actually put that together? What am I trying to say on it? What am I trying to show and depict? It's about good risk management. Am I able to see into the future and think about preemptively, but what if this happened? What would be the outcome? What would be the result? And I'm very risk averse. Anyone that knows me will tell you that. It's about being able to listen and so that you can gather those requirements. So you're listening to your stakeholders and you're asking them, what are your wants and needs? And sometimes, be aware of this, what they want isn't necessarily what they need. So we've got to be able to have those conversations and engage with them to extract the actual requirements. We've got to be able to define the scope. So what are we going to include within that project and not include in it? So if I talk about my living room again, I might say, don't touch the shutters. I'm saying that that's out of scope. If I've got shutters on my windows, don't even think about changing them. But everything else might be within the scope. It's about making sure that what I end up with is of good quality. So you've got to be good at quality management and quality identification. This goes hand in hand with requirements and scope. And agile, it's a skill. It's about being able to be flexible. Don't be so rigid. In Prince 2, we don't want people to be rigid. We want you to be flexible to changing needs and requirements in your environment. In addition to that, we need you to have interpersonal skills as well. You've got to be able to talk to people up the chain as well as down the chain. You've got to be able to lead your team. Your team's looking to you for guidance. Your team is looking for you to tell them, why am I here and what am I trying to achieve? So team building is important, bringing people together. They may never have worked together before, so now I want to create an environment where they get to know each other and they can work well together. I've got to be able to influence. So influencing is getting people to see things from a different perspective. Problem solving. I'm not going to lie to you. All the projects I've ever run have never always gone smoothly. Problems will arise. It's how you deal with it. So how are you going to face the problem face on? And what's the solution to that? How am I going to engage with my stakeholders to find that solution? And negotiation. Let's be real. In today's world, we're all fighting for the same pot of money, the same resource, and we've got lots of different projects going on around us, and we need that skill set. So negotiation is key, being able to express why you need that person, why you need that money or that time, and being able to negotiate a deal that works for your project. Wider than that, it's important to recognize that you need to have some market awareness. What is going on around me? You don't want to be so silo that you're not aware of everything else that's going on around you. Industry knowledge is really crucial. Know your industry, know what's going on in that industry. Be aware of your strategy and your culture within your organization, as well as what's going on around you. Law is important because if you're working in environments that are highly legislated and you've got You've got quality standards and regulations that you've got to deliver against. You need to be up to speed with what is the latest that I've got to make sure I'm addressing and adhering to. Finance is important. When we do projects, we're spending money. And we've got to have a basic understanding of, well, how much money am I starting with and how is that being drip fed to me? Don't always assume you're going to get a big pot of money right at the front. So what you need to do is think about, well, okay, where is the funding coming from? Am I going to have any funding gaps on the journey of this project? And how am I going to bridge that gap? And of course, HR, that's where your skill set's going to come from. If we don't have what I need within the organization, I'm going to need to bring people in. So HR is going to help you because they can invest in the learning and development, they can point you in the right direction, and they can fill any gaps that you might have with new recruits. So, just to thank you for listening to me go on for however many minutes it's been, just to recap, we're talking about project management and AI, and I want to leave you with this thought. Imagine that you're going to run your next project. What are the things that you wish AI could do for you? I know what my wish list is, and luckily it gets answered pretty much every time these days because the technology is there. But I want you to think about, what are you going to go away and do on your next project that can use AI to free you up to do the things that you need to be doing? Is it going to be your planning? Is it going to be how you deal with risk? Is it going to be how you communicate with your stakeholders? I want to leave you with that thought because there is stuff out there that you can use. And of course, don't forget, you can always try and look through the Prince 2 manual as well as the AI in Prince 2 and using it alongside Prince 2. All of that information is available to you. Hopefully you've enjoyed the session, nice and quick and brief, and I'll see you again in another webinar for sure. Take care.